Learn how to receive data in JSON format and convert it into a usable JavaScript object. In this lesson, we want to look at how you can convert server text into live objects. When a web server answers your website's request, it drops off a text payload. Even if that text looks exactly like JavaScript code, your browser treats it as a giant dumb string of letters until you tell it otherwise. And so we want to look at how you can actually work with such payloads to transform it into your own desirable way of working with the payload. So let's move into the script part. And inside the script section, let's make a JSON. Let me call it my data. So let it be a JSON string that contains the name, age, city, and lastly, let me add maybe country, into it. So now that I have this data, let me convert it into an object. So to convert this from a plain text or from a JSON string into an object, I need the JSON pass method, JSON.pass, which should take in the parameter or the data, my data. So now what I used to have here as plain text or JSON string has now been made into a live JavaScript object. Then I can go ahead and use object method to get element by IT to interact with the property of that object. So I can do something like this, my obj.main, and then this will return John for me. My obj.city, this should return New York. My obj.country, this should return USA, and finally age should return 30. Now, looking at what we just accomplished on the screen, the example shows that our script part of our code simulates receiving a text payload from the server. So this is assumed to be the payload from the server that is received. And we are now using the JSON.pass method in order to transform that text string into a native object in JavaScript, and then reaches inside using the dot notation to print the name or the age or whatever info you want to print on the screen. So to actually use this data, like to actually use the data that we have inside our JSON string, like showing the name, the age, or whatever, it needs to be run through the JSON.pass method. And this acts like an unboxing process, kind of like turning raw text back into an active object that you can instantly interact with. And that is the exact way you can use to convert server text into live objects so that you can be able to interact with the property of such a payload that is received from the server. So looking closely at our code, you can see this part that mimics a data packet that is sent by a server. So it's a single continuous string of text that is wrapped in single quote. You can see the single quote outside. And this part is where the browser reads through the string, ensures that the formatting rules are perfect, and constructs a living JavaScript object out of it in memory. And finally, this part is where the result is being printed or write to the screen, so that we know whatever value we are trying to extract from the properties of our live JavaScript objects in memory. Here are a few key takeaways from this lesson. When communicating with back-end system, the workflow is almost always a loop. You send a text string, the server replies to the text string, and you pass it to read it. Number two, JSON.pass method will immediately throw an error if the incoming text string has broken syntax, like missing quote or trailing commas. For example, let's say I have double comma instead of one. Let's see what happens. You can see that there's immediately a flash of error and the values disappear to let us know that something is wrong. And you can see uncaught syntax error, JSON.parse, expected double quoted property name at line 1 colon 26 of the JSON data, just because I introduced an extra trailing commas. So if I remove it, then it will revert back to what the value used to be. And finally, once passed, you can pass this data around your application and inject it into list or use it to update your user interface dynamically. So once the data that is received from the server is passed, like the way we have done here, then you can now begin to use this data, like injecting it into list. You can use it to update your user interface dynamically because it has been converted into a live JavaScript object, which make it accessible to get the properties or interact with the properties of that object at any point in time or at any point in your application where those properties or where those data are needed to be passed around dynamically.